Hello everyone and welcome to Taide.Piste. This is a talk event hosted by Taide Yliopisto, and every 1 month there's a discussion that has to do obviously with important questions in society, and this time we're actually going to talk about diversity in classical music. How is there enough diversity in classical music? Is there actually too little diversity in classical music? And the big question I think today is what could we do about it in Finland? What should we do? What are the tools we could actually use at this important moment? I'll have great panelists talking with me today actually for people in the classical music field. And obviously my name is Sean Ricks. I'm a journalist in Finland. I work for the Finnish Broadcasting Company, but I'll try to help make sense in all of this. But now, before we actually start the discussion, we have two fantastic musicians here, Sujari Britt and Valeria. I'm going to try to pronounce this name absolutely perfect. Regian? It went okay. It went okay. Anyway, they're going to be playing a song called No One's Driving.
The first one is
Rahmanios first. Okay.
third movement of the song.
Okay. Well, they'll be playing music right now. Anyway, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujari and Valeria. Now I'd actually like to welcome Rosa Parada to the stage. Rosa, hi.
Hi.
Like I said before, we're having a discussion today, especially let's talk about Finland and the classical music scene in Finland, and talk about multicultural diversity, and also, why not, also about racism. This is obviously something that's especially people have been talking about it a lot in the past year, especially with everything happening in the United States, with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. I wouldn't say, it's pretty clear, just for people to know, the reason we're here is basically because of you and Verso Ensemble, the group you represent. Walk me through it a bit. Why did Verso Ensemble actually want to have this discussion in Finland at this point in time?
Yes, so I'm representing here Verso Ensemble. We are a chamber music collective. We consist of Finnish and American musicians. And so we've had a really good view through our American colleagues to the happenings in the United States. And from what they tell us, we understand that the conversation around Black Lives Matter has spread to all parts of the society, and here in Finland, of course, we hear the news of police brutality, but I think we don't fully understand how deeply it is in the structures, and that it also touches, for example, classical music field where we work in, and there have been also some cases inside our own group where we have had to reconsider and really think about the questions of racial discrimination and who is represented in classical music.
Can you say anything about, you mentioned you've had discussions within your own group. What kind of discussions have been happening?
Well, there was this one case where some private messages of a member of our group were leaked to social media, and they were racist messages that contained insulting language and some assumptions of artistry based on skin color. And of course, we, as an artistic group, and also everybody individually condemns this kind of actions and words. But it came really clear that we have to discuss about these matters inside our own group, and had to make a public statement about the matter. And it was really difficult and very eye-opening for us Finnish members of the group to see how delicate and difficult issues these are.
How's your group doing at the moment? I mean, like you said, it was a painful experience for everybody to go through, obviously, and it came very close. How is Verso Ensemble doing at the moment?
Well, at the moment, because of the situation of the world with the COVID, everything is kind of on hold, but we're hoping in the near future to be able to continue giving concerts. And but at the moment, this person doesn't take part to our ensemble.
Well, considering the past year and obviously what happened in your group, what kind of discussions did you have about, let's say, diversity before everything that happened? What was the kind of mindset? Walk me through it.
Yeah, well, I think it's really in the core of our artistic work that we come from different backgrounds, and the kind of strength and speciality of our group really lies in its multicultural nature, and we think that the fact that we come from different backgrounds is something that is a way to deepen and enrich classical music field, and it's one of our core values, and that's why we want to kind of make our music, we want to include everyone, and that's why we think about these matters also when we think about repertoire and venues, for example.
What has the past year, what has it taught you personally? What kind of new ideas, I don't know, have you been getting?
Yeah, well, maybe since the situations are so different in US and here in Finland, myself, like personally, I realized that I haven't actually thought about these matters so much when it comes to music making, because, and that's also as well, I think, because I don't suffer from this kind of prejudice and discrimination. But having to hear what's going on in the States has really opened my eyes to it, that there are people who actually have to be afraid for their lives, for example. So it's not only a political matter; it's a matter of human rights.
Talking about Verso Ensemble, what kind of I'm thinking about the diversity within the group. Do you have African American members? What's the group like actually?
Well, at the moment we have mostly Finnish members, and then some Asian Americans and Americans, but no Black Americans at the moment.
Yeah, and not to say that that's a bad thing, but also just to get a picture.
Yeah, but something that we did now after everything that happened last summer is that we actually asked a colleague from Juilliard School to tell us about his experiences being a Black American musician, and that was really.
Can you say what kind of experiences was he talking about? Obviously, what came to your mind?
Well, about he having to think about being sometimes the only person of his minority, like what is his place in let's say orchestras or ensembles and things like that.
Well, as said, now we're having this discussion here at Taidepiste. What did you feel that Taideyliopisto especially should have this discussion in Finland? What was the kind of idea here? What are you trying to achieve with it?
Yeah, well, maybe when I think about from the Finnish perspective, I think a good question would be how exclusive the classical music actually is. Like starting from who gets to have classical music as hobby, continue to study in institutes, continue studying professionally, ending up working in the field. Those are, I think, questions that need to be asked here as well, because I feel that many Finnish minorities aren't represented really well.
Do you feel like, considering, well, from what I understand, especially the classical music scene has been maybe a bit late into this discussion. It's important that we're discussing it right now, but there has been this maybe sense that it's a bit late when it comes to, let's say, acting schools or so. How do you see it?
Yeah, maybe that's right. Just like thinking from my own perspective that I myself haven't thought about these questions so much before they came kind of really close.
Yeah, well, there is this, how would I say, maybe a sense that people might have is that classical music and this kind of conservative mindset go together quite clearly. What do you think?
Well, not maybe in my generation anymore, but maybe in the past, yeah.
Considering, obviously we're going to have a discussion soon with my panelists, but what's the kind of change you would hope in the future, the near future also? What do you hope is going to change actually?
Well, I hope that that it would be like starting from the grassroots level, from like all the people who study classical music, for example, or are part of small ensembles like ours, all the way to the big institutions and their leaders, that they would first kind of start the conversation of these things and then start to act in a way like taking into consideration of like who is represented and is there someone that we're missing out on?
Yeah. Well, obviously, one of the questions I'm going to ask later today is also, we're talking also kind of about the future of classical music. Where is it actually going? Without, let's say, more diversity, what do you think about the future when it comes to a field you obviously love, classical music? What will happen if we don't have, let's say, more diversity? Because somebody could say that classical music, the representation is still quite, so to speak, white and Eurocentric.
Yes. I feel that we might lose audience because when we think about the audience, how it is today, for example, in orchestra concerts, it's quite old. And like you said, white and maybe from upper middle class. So maybe we should think about where do we bring classical music and how it could be heard by a more diverse group of people.
Yeah, hey, we'll have this discussion now, and thanks so much, Rosa, for
Thank
being
you, Sean.
here and for making this conversation actually happen. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask my panelists to come onto the stage. Just don't be shy, everybody. All right. All right, welcome everybody. And I want to just tell everybody looking on YouTube, you can send comments on the comment message, comments board, and we'll try to pick them up obviously for this conversation. So just let them keep them coming, and I'll ask my guests obviously. But Rosa kind of threw the gauntlet here about saying that we need to actually implement change, that enough talk and so forth. But before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty, I would like everybody to kind of introduce yourself very shortly. And I would also want to know, because at the moment, there's a lot of talk about diversity, racism, but as I said, talk is cheap, but I would like to know also who you are and why do you think we should have this discussion right now, right here?
Okay, first of all, it's
Easy
great
questions
to be
first, but obviously.
It's great to be here, and thank you very much for the introduction. And I believe it's very important that this discussion is happening right now in this building, flagship
Musiikkitalo,
cultural
obviously, yeah.
institution for classical music, and house to maybe 3 orchestras, if I may say, with the Sibelius Academy, and also home to Sibelius Academy. So my name is Ceyda Berk Söderblom, and I have been working as a cultural professional, festival programmer, curator for 20 years, 14 years as a classical music programmer, and last 6 years based in Finland as an independent one. Of course, I represent also my organization, which focuses on my NGO work. I'm currently chairperson at Global Point, an umbrella association promoting diversity, inclusion, equity in the Finnish art scene, and try to improve the working conditions of foreign-born artists and cultural professionals living and working in Finland. So this is my position right now. Would you like me to open up the perspective, or are we going to continue with the introduction?
If you can we can get into details obviously later, but just shortly, why should we talk about, let's say, diversity in the classical music scene at the moment? Why is it so important is probably something that people might be thinking about.
Well, actually, I would like to thank for the introduction, and because it was a kind of good ground that we can continue. First of all, when we think about diversity and inclusion and this kind of societal issues and why they are important, we need to look at the society. Which kind of people consist of society, where we live, what is our position. And of course, in that case, we need to little bit think about human rights, because participation to culture, participation to workforce and accessibility, those are the things that we need to include. Diversity and inclusion narrative has something to do with the current legislation, of course, in Finland, constitutional right. But more than this, what I would like to say, it's about future and which kind of future that we would like to be. And if we're gonna challenge the Western classical music canon, I think it should be from the position of in which way we would like to rebuild it, that this canon can represent something we have right now and can be responsive and would be open in a wider perspective for many audience. This is my general view. But of course, when it comes to Finnish case, maybe we need to go a little bit into details. So we need to maybe do it a bit later.
Go into details. We'll continue with the introduction over here.
So I'm Emily Gardberg. I've been here for just a month at the Sibelius Academy in the Arts University as Dean. And I very much now see this discussion in a way as a, I don't know, like a jumping board for me for the next 5 years. I want to get your opinions and I want to hear your thoughts, and I hope I will very much get to work with these things and accessibility in classical music and in music in general. Of course, we do have a lot of other things than classical music. I feel maybe this is especially important. My last job was in London, and before that I've lived in the States, and I've seen quite a lot of the work that is being done. And in a way, of course, we are always a little bit after in Finland. We're a smaller country, and we're also here on the side of Europe in a way. But there is also something that makes us maybe not discuss these things quite as much as they are discussed in the rest of the world. And that's why it's very important to bring it forward, because...
Could you say that it's kind of, it can also become an excuse here in Finland for us, because we're here in the north, we're a small country, it's okay for us to come a bit behind.
Yes, well, it is a thing that we can, or we've been able to do before, but I think nowadays we have all these things. We know instantly when there is a riot going on in New York, and we know immediately, we pick up on those signals. And I think now there is a demand that it's maybe, like Rosa said earlier, that not the younger generation doesn't anymore agree that it's okay to be represented by just a certain type of looking individuals or sounding individuals, but that you actually want to have a large inclusion of people. And I think as dean of this academy, I have to think about how classical music will be something that is relevant also to future generations. And in order to have that, we cannot simply only do things like we've done before. Classical music has always, of course, evolved earlier, but I think now we need a little bit more rapid change, and we need to really sort of be able to, which has been hard for me, for instance, in the UK, sometimes to really, really look at your own prejudice and your own sort of how you've been brought up in this culture of classical music, or I have been, and you are quite used to how things go and how things are and how we do things, and then to really also mirror that is something that can be quite painful sometimes.
We'll get into that, because the way things are done easily becomes sort of comfortable thing for all of us. But let's try to get out of our comfort zone today, obviously. Sujari.
Hi, so I'm Sujari Britt, and I'm actually a master's student here in Sibelius Academy.
And thank you also so much for the performance. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Just to say that also.
Thank you so much.
It's so nice to hear live music.
Yeah.
After a long time. But yeah, continue.
It's lovely to actually have a bit of an audience, and also to play with Valeria. It's always a pleasure. Sorry about the program. I meant that the Rachmaninoff first and then the other piece. But
no problem.
But yeah, so I'm really happy to be here to try and offer my experience and my point of view on diversity and things we spoke about, like quotas and kind of finding a better solution, or any kind of solution is always better to sort of solve the problem of like feeling included and actually being included, and still keeping qualities in mind and kind of evening out the game.
Yeah, evening out the game, well said. Then.
Yes, so my name is Aleksi Malmberg, and I'm the general manager of the Helsinki Philharmonic Orchestra, and obviously sort of having with our organization very long roots in the Finnish musical tradition and the heritage. But the way I see it, we have a strong responsibility also on building the future heritage of music life in Finland. And sort of that's one of the reasons why I think this kind of discussion is hugely important, and sort of very curious also to learn more and to see what can we do together. As a background, before 3 years ago starting with the orchestra, I lived in Brussels for 3 years, running the Finnish Institute there. And it's a very different kind of city. Like, I think over 60% of inhabitants of Brussels have moved from somewhere else, from outside Belgium. And it's a very sort of diverse society as a whole. But coming to what Emily, you said about Finland somehow lagging behind or not being on top of the current issues. I think in music, we in many ways, we are sort of showing direction, or we can be showing direction. And sort of having an open dialogue on what can we learn from different countries, different ways of doing things is a big possibility.
And obviously, since I'm a journalist, I love disagreements, so feel free to disagree with each other as much as you want. That's super okay. This is a good and safe space for that. I'll go back to history just a bit before we continue. I'll read a quote concerning Antonín Dvořák from 1893, actually. And just to say, 1893, so we're going back in time. This is from the New York Herald. He said, this is concerning the United States, but the future of this country, speaking of the United States, must be founded upon what are called the Negro melodies. Obviously, he's talking about African Americans. This must be the real foundation of any serious and original school of composition to be developed in the United States. Well, we're talking about the United States here. But when we take this actually into Finland, would you agree with that? If we're to have a foundation for the future, which is obviously serious and full of possibilities, is Antonín Dvořák kind of right here? Obviously, he's talking about the United States, but I want to bring it back to Finland also.
Well, of course, if we start, what are the possibilities that we could build on? In Finland, I see being a bit late in this discussion as a possibility, as an opportunity instead of disadvantage, because what we could do, we could first learn from the bad examples, not to repeat.
Can you
which
give me
happened.
just a few examples of when you said bad examples? What are bad examples?
Maybe in the Finnish case, I would say it would be nice to little bit list what we need to discuss when it comes to diversity and inclusion. First of all, we need to start from the terminology and we need to start from the definition. Because usually what I observe when it comes to diversity, we are coming a group of people to give a picture of, I would say, United Colors of Benetton. So diversity, what we mean. We need to really consider people's social and personal and professional identities, which includes, of course, class, age, sexual orientation, where we come from, and what are our backgrounds, and of course, professional background. And all these different diverse backgrounded people, if they are working in an organization, in the way that their belonging is there, and they are included, then we can talk about this organization or space as a diverse and inclusive. I think it's important because sometimes it remains on the surface as a bit visible diversity. And then we need to talk about, of course, very strong structural discrimination that we have been suffering in Finland. There are many research and reports just showing the fact and data, and almost every day we are reading some discriminatory
Can you give me
recruitment
just
process.
like one example of when you're talking about let's say discrimination in a structural level in Finland? What is it?
Well, let's put it this way. Now we are sitting in Helsinki in the music hall, means that if you look at the population of this metropolitan area, more than 16% of the residents and citizens of metropolitan area speak other than Finnish, Swedish or Sami language. And this number, this population will rise by 2030 more than 25%. So if we pick that example and look at from the representation point of view, we don't see the representation of that population in the arts and cultural institutions. So this is a structural problem, if I may say.
I'll ask you, Sujari, like a question concerning representation. It's obviously, I'll talk about just shortly about myself. For me, obviously, it's something I've had to think about as a kid, as a Finnish journalist. There weren't people who looked like me, afros, dark skin, on television. So there's this idea, obviously, that we need representation to show people this is what you can achieve, this is what you can strive towards. How do you think about, you were born in the United States, actually. I used this quote just a moment ago. You're from New York. How did you feel about representation? Were you craving for people from the same background? What did you think?
From my background, actually, I was privileged. I am privileged to have a musical family. So I think being able to have already some kind of like classical music, jazz, like this kind of culture already in the house, I had a bit of an advantage than to say one of my neighbors. I feel like in the classical music environment that I've grown up in, there's not as much representation for people who look like me as I'd like to see. But I also think that unfortunately it brings in this side of like quotas, and then I would try to find a way to simplify this idea of some kind of toxic positivity, in the sense that sometimes when we are really like working hard to get where we're getting, sometimes we are like kind of getting where we are based on a number, based on something that you have to meet. And even though that's good and it helps a lot for people to get into different levels in the classical music world or art industry in general, it's also somehow we have to question ourselves a bit. Is this based on my work ethic? Is this based on my talent? Or is this based on a number? And sometimes it's a bit tricky to know the difference. And I feel like, I don't know, it's...
Is this something more, like, could you elaborate? Is it something you, especially yourself, have been struggling with? Or do you ever get the sense that people look at you through that lens?
I would say both. I thankfully feel like I've really worked to get where I've gotten, and I've been really lucky to have really supportive and amazing people around me to mentor me and to make sure that I'm getting where I feel like I need to be going. But I also know that music is still a business, and sometimes it's really just as cut and dry as it may sound. And I feel like, yes, it should be quite strict, but it would be nice to feel like it's really, really loudly represented that, yes, we just want quality and we are only listening to what you're doing. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to elaborate on that, actually. But is it getting a bit clearer?
Yeah, but let's say concerning, let's say, prejudices or discrimination, where do you see, let's say, the classical music scene in Finland? Where do you see maybe key problems at the moment?
I think that actually, in the 4 years that I've been here, it seems like quite optimistic and people are quite listening to things.
And I also want to say there doesn't have to be only problems. As a journalist, I'm always looking for
for
problems. And we can have a positive discussion here and see both sides.
Yeah,
so just to say that, just continue.
For sure.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's a lot of, like, for example, us. We are here basically at a round table in a way, trying to discuss a way to move forward. I feel like we have to start somehow when the kids are younger, like the people who have immigrated here and like maybe didn't have the same opportunities as like the people who are born here. Sometimes like the education is really great in this country, and even though everyone is offered it, somehow it would be really nice to sort of include basically anyone and everyone in some kind of music class and some kind of, kind of interaction between maybe the young students and the college students, for example, because in Sibelius Academy, we are all from different places.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that could be some way to sort of connect and like bridge the gap between the younger generations from abroad and us from also abroad.
Obviously, there's, like Seda said before, diversity can mean many things. We're not only talking about, obviously, skin color. Personally, I don't like the terms like, let's say, white, black, and so forth. People are so much more, obviously. Of course, these are terms we have to use, but just a populist question I'll ask, and this has nothing to do with your skin colors, but since I need to let you, Emily and Aleksi, also talk a bit here, is, let's say, a simple question, is classical music in Finland, is it too white?
Now it would be great if I could answer in a non-COVID time, because since I've been the last 3 years in the UK, I haven't actually seen a concert in Finland for like, I don't know how long. But can I change this, and can I say about when the audiences are? Well, no, I'll actually not answer your question.
First, I need you to answer my question.
I won't answer a question. No, so I'll answer it maybe soon. But my general perception of the Finnish audience is that it's often really interesting, and people, like a lot of times we see a lot of young people coming in, and we have good programs for all kinds of things. But then when you see that enthusiasm, when people actually feel a connection with who is on stage, like an example, like what's his name? Sheku Kannemason, the musician who is extremely popular in US and UK. And I went to this completely every week concert in London, and sort of the strangeness when you look at the sort of grayish heads and then a few not gray heads, but then suddenly you have sort of half of the audience is a different color than normally. And it was actually quite like, and then you see what it means to actually have somebody representing someone, or that you feel you belong to that. And for me, that was a really powerful message. And maybe I'm not so good at saying if I don't know, Aleksi might be better. Is there that sort of similar thing happening in Finland, that you actually can see a shift in the audience based on that you want to have that recognition with? I know that, for instance, earlier that could be that it was a female conductor, because that was really rare. So then you could see suddenly young feminists lining up outside a concert hall, and you immediately reached out to a new demographic. But do we have this thing happening here? I don't know.
Getting back to your question, actually, yeah, it's not only in Finland, but globally, classical music is very white, and I think that's a problem for the future of music.
Emily said there's too many gray hairs, obviously.
Well, that's another question. We can get back to that.
But get to this one, yeah.
And obviously, the roots and the heritage of classical music are in the European courts and churches. It was the noblesse who sort of enjoyed the music.
Yeah.
Even though if musicians were not always as well paid as they would deserve for the hard work that they are doing, it was the privileged who sort of created and maintained this art form. But now, looking at where we are in 2021, and what do we want the world to be like in the future, and how the global world is growing, and how, like Seda said, the citizens of Helsinki in 10 years' time will be 1/4 coming from another native background than Finnish and Swedish. Not only for the people to have the chance to feel welcome to the classical music and feel that they are, they have the same capacity and possibilities in this field as anyone else. But also for the sake of what future music will be like. I think it's for the benefit of music that we have a more diverse, more broad, pool of talents, of different social backgrounds, different language backgrounds, different kind of aesthetics and cultures.
Yeah.
I would like to make a very short comment, because the question that you ask, exactly the way you ask, is very important, because whiteness is not only skin color, it's a structure, and it is how we exercise our power. And it's a kind of accumulated practice of certain way of doing for centuries, and now we need to really challenge that. Because how we build our environment, how we pick our people, how we recruit people, how we work with others, and how we create our spaces comes as a racist structure. I think we should see whiteness from that position. And if we see whiteness as a power structure in the institutions, in the environments, in the field that we live in, work for, promote and support by keeping silent or being silent in some situations, then we can understand really deep points of the structural discrimination. So as a continuation to this question.
Just to continue on your point, that was a good point that you were saying, obviously, about whiteness as a structure. But obviously a person can be so many things at the same time. A person can be, like, let's say in the classical music scene, it's a minority, or let's say women, for instance. You can be a white woman.
Yes.
So it's kind of, what are you kind of looking for when we talk about breaking this kind of white structure? Because I said people can be so many things at the same time.
Yeah, that's very true. Therefore, we need to really study the mainstream and who is underrepresented. If we really look the space and the institutions and try to understand who might be here instead of some certain other personalities, and whom we are leaving out, and whom we need to bring in, because the streets are looking in a different than our small environment, then we will see. Therefore, underrepresented minorities could be anyone. Today, freelancers and gig workers in Finland became marginalized, and this has nothing to do with the background, this has nothing to do with the skin color, because the institutionalized system and the mainstream is able to operate even under these restrictions with certain financial support, but then the rest has become marginalized. So if we really understand under which conditions, which persons become marginalized, then we will see how structure works in a better way, I would say.
Just to bring up a point concerning, Alexi already kind of brought it up, but one problem that could be said that is in the classical music scene, well, let's talk about, it's also socio-economical. Lessons cost, instruments cost a lot. Obviously, whether you're black, white, whatever, this is a problem for many people who just don't have the money to buy instruments, don't have the money or the opportunities to get lessons. So Georgi, like you said, you come from a background where this, obviously, it sounds like it wasn't an issue, like, let's say, but getting instruments. But how was it with your upbringing? How do you get into classical music?
So actually, for example, my mom, she used to play piano when she was younger, and then saxophone, and then she's actually working for the city, so she's one of the normal people in our family. And then my father is a jazz musician, and then both of my siblings are violinists. So
a very musical family.
Yeah, for sure. And when I was really little, I started to try to play piano, and then violin, and then eventually cello. And it was not difficult to get an instrument. The only time I would say in a laughing manner that it was difficult is to convince my parents to let me switch from violin to cello. I was 4. Like, it was really difficult.
How easy was that switch?
That was fun. That was really funny. They didn't listen to me for a year because, it's kind of like, yeah, but you can't even carry a cello. But eventually, it was quite okay to find a teacher and everything. And eventually, I had auditioned for the Manhattan School of Music pre-college. So in a way, I feel like I was on a track, and even though, of course, there were different obstacles to overcome, meaning to practice even, to get to a level to be able to go to the audition, to know people to ask to study with and things like this. It was pretty straightforward for me, thankfully. I think more of the difficulties came when you start to get a bit more advanced and when you are getting a bit older and when you have opinions about things and you want to play certain things and go certain places, and then you have to really work to find a way, and there's a lot of politics in music.
Yeah.
So I think starting out it was okay, and then now it's like, I have to think.
Well, I asked the question kind of like, is classical music too wide? And Aleksi kind of said, that, it can be too wide. I'll ask you in the perspective of concerning classical composers that many people can list. I would venture to say that most people would list people, usually men, white men,
Yes.
in this sense. What were the people you especially admired when you were growing up and younger, thinking, this is who I would like to become?
See, for me, I think it's more, how do I say this actually? I, of course, had a lot of idols like Brahms and Rachmaninoff and all of these. And yes, true, they are all men from different countries in Europe. And even though in the US we have a lot of different kind of people and different composers, female composers, like anything, it's still hard to sort of find someone to really look into and to be really inspired by, because female composers to this day are not so represented. They're not so, well, maybe not represented, like it's not the right word, but they're not so presented, like they're not so promoted as maybe their male counterparts. And unfortunately, I don't have too many people to say that I was really trying to become. And a part of it for me was also I wanted to sort of make my stamp on the world and sort of change, like you have these ideas and you want to change what classical music could be like. And for me, growing up, I wanted to set my own example. But of course, I love Amy Beach and all of the rest, but still, I think, unfortunately, growing up, I really didn't have like a female composer that I could say, I want to really emulate what this woman's doing. It was really, really tough to find, at least in classical music.
Yeah.
Can I just comment? I think that's sort of like, it's something that we feel that we have to defend, that we have this fantastic long tradition of all of these white guys. But in a way, I think we can just turn that like sort of upside down. We have that fantastic tradition and we can still play all of them, and we can like, I was like a huge Bach fan, and then, I could be completely geeky with all my fugas and whatever and explaining to people who are not interested. But then in a way, now we can also get excited because we do have, as Aleksi said, what we are good at in Finland, I think, is also like picking up things and being online and reacting to different things. And I think now we are sort of having this breakthrough of underrepresented people coming through in the like Verso Ensemble, lifting up things that they like making proactive choices. And also then combining these old European white men with this new music and making sort of new conversations. And I think that's really powerful. We don't have to, because I think some people are afraid that by speaking about change and diversity, we would somehow neglect the past, which has fantastic things in it. But that's not, I think it's not the case, or that's at least not the case I want to be building. It's more just seeing the whole world as it can be, and including also people who haven't previously been included. So
of course, and like you're speaking, and Sujari said, and Aleksi also, and obviously Seida, we're talking also about the future of classical music, which I would say is important for everybody here. I don't know how to play any instruments, God forbid, but I grew up in a family that appreciated classical music very much, and I actually used this Dvořák quote because he's a personal favorite of mine. Obviously, well, it's great. There's this saying, talk is cheap. This talk isn't cheap. It's important that we're having this talk, but I kind of want to steer the discussion into what can we actually do? Because I think we're kind of the same mind that obviously classical music has to go forward. We need more diversity. That's clear. It's important. But the next step is, okay, we know this, but what are we going to actually do? Sujari also already talked a bit about quotas, but Emily, I can see you want to say something, and you just came into your position, so go for it.
I'm on a roll now. No, but I think sort of like the principle of this whole discussion is really good that we have it here at the Sibelius Academy, because of course, as the only music university academy in Finland, of course, we have a great responsibility in bringing up the future educators, and because they are educated here, of course, also in other places. But this is a really important role that we have, and to how diversity is then being talked about already when we, like all throughout the studies, it should come in very early on that people realize that we are trying to reach quite a broad audience, and we have to have different methods. We have to have people who look and sound different, and we also shouldn't be too afraid of I remember when I was small, it was quite important that you were taught certain classical things, and then some other kinds of music that were not as important. I think it's very important to be open to all kinds, because people are not stupid. They just go online and listen to something, whatever they want to. And if you don't feel like classical music also is important and is included in sort of your everyday life, how can it then become something that you actually want to work with, or you want to sit in the concert hall? So it just has to be really, really relevant. And well, there we have, that's sort of our job. And luckily we already have, for instance, in the music education department, a lot of young people who are interested and who are doing their theses and other on inclusion and diversity. But there is a lot to be done.
But there's one thing that could be changed is curriculum, obviously, but I'll get into that soon. But Seida.
Maybe I would like to just build on what you said. It's very important, of course, to create an inclusive environment for today's young musicians and students, because they are the future's gatekeepers, and hopefully they will have this in-house feeling when they have chance to become a professional. But apart from that, what I would like to say is just who is going to take the responsibility, because arts and cultural institutions have, first of all, moral responsibility, because they are heavily publicly funded, especially in the Finnish case, and means this money comes from everyone who pays tax. So basically how this public funding is being used for the highest benefit of everyone matters. And when it comes to who is going to do what, it's a bit complicated in the structure, because I currently, basically last year, work as part of Ministry of Education and Culture with a group of experts to prepare some recommendations for the cultural policy. And it's an incredible report. I recommend everyone to read, because it includes very doable, very simple, very realistic recommendations. But the most important thing, based on many research also that we observe during our work in my organization, the attitudes of the gatekeepers. So we need strong will from the leaders and the gatekeepers of the arts and cultural institutions. They need to really start this change. Because if this change is not coming from the institutions, and if it is not incorporated within the institutions' daily work, then we will not be able to achieve for the things that we are aiming to.
Just an example. What do these gatekeepers need to do? Because if there's a gatekeeper now watching, yelling out like, "Tell me, what do I need to do?"
So
what would you say? What would be like the first thing on Seida's list?
I just came quite ready, and I need to see from there. In 2019 September, Kupore published a very important report, AWOS, Opening, a masterpiece, 160 pages. Just a small example, because we are talking about orchestras. Under the Finnish Non-Discrimination Act, any organization that have more than 30 workers should oblige to prepare an equality plan. And in 2017, when the AWOS research was conducted, 11 orchestras responded to this research, and research included that specific question: do you have an equality plan? 1 said yes, 8 said no, and 2 orchestras couldn't answer. So I hope
they send a message, automatic reply, we'll get back to you. Yeah. That's what they did. But
so this is a concrete example, for instance, to start with.
Aleksi.
That's one concrete example. Even though I think all the cities in Finland should have an equality plan, and by law, and the orchestras being funded mostly by the cities and being part of the cities. I wonder how it's the case, and why have they answered that they didn't have? Perhaps they didn't know about the plan that exists in the city, or whatever the reason is, but it's a problem. Yeah. There's a lot of these kind of things that, the world is not ready, and we have those issues that we need to correct one by one, and sort of trying to get a little better every day. But I think the change is coming, and there's a lot of good things happening at the same time. Juuso Charis talked about, for example, the female composers not being so much presented. And meanwhile, Kaija Saariaho was sort of chosen as the most influential living composer in the world today, for a good reason, I think. So for many people in the field, the question is the pace in which the change is happening too slow? Is it too fast? Should it be somehow going so-called organically? No, I don't think, because it's a social structure. We need to make the decisions to choose to change it. But how quickly do we make the change, and how to make it so that it supports everyone? That's a very crucial question. I'm going to go very, in practice, and what are the ways?
I'm a journalist. I love practice, so go give me practice. Yeah, I love that.
To support diversity, I think it's both sort of removing the obstacles and also supporting the possibilities. Education is hugely important. And for example, the Helsinki Phil, we just last year started again this Culture Kids program, where every single newborn citizens of the city of Helsinki in 2000 was invited to become sort of a culture kid of the orchestra, and 2 times a year we invite them for free and their families to join in. And it goes through the child healthcare system, so that, and with all the different languages you can imagine, in Vietnamese, in Chinese, in Turkish, and so forth. So it's an effort, and still we are struggling to sort of try and reach everyone. We can't. You talked about the instrument course and so forth. In Finland, the Music Institute system, the schooling system, is very good, and it's sort of, there is a strong support. It shouldn't be a financial, it's more a cultural, social question, I think. But again, in Helsinki, the music institutes, the schools, are situated in, certain areas and not throughout the city. So there are boundaries which we could sort of work on to make it more equal.
Because one could say that is a problem in
that
the
is
sense
a problem,
that reachability.
And then there's a question of role models, and how people can actually look towards the classical music and see that this could be me, and I could be there. I could this belongs to me, this music. That's one concrete thing that the institutions can do and may affect.
And programs, I would say.
Programs is a way of giving those role models as well. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of sharing power. The ones who have power, how, and in which ways they just don't hold it only to themselves, but also sharing that, which I think is a very concrete tactics that one could use. And then, I mentioned removing the obstacles, and that's for me a tricky part. Because,
How so? Yeah.
Because I'm totally privileged in so many ways, and I throughout my life I've been given much more than many other. I don't see those obstacles very easily, and I need to sort of hear and learn and be curious and open to understand what are the obstacles that people who are not so privileged have encountered, and that's where I'm still working on.
And exactly at that point, I would recommend there are excellent expert organizations who have been working on diversity and inclusion issues. I mean, the organization where I work for 4 years, advocating for foreign-born art professionals' working conditions and in general, but there are many other organizations that we have been collaborating together. And each organization, since they stand for a specific community and they know their problems better than anyone, I think it's important to have a dialogue also with this organization, because I don't want to go back to this research report, but the report also says that none of the orchestras, unfortunately, had any communication with a certain organization who have expertise in diversity and inclusion issues.
Emily, you've been in your position not for too long so far, but Aleksi was also talking about, well, we can think about change in the sort of sense that we'll go slowly, gradually, or we can speed it up a bit. Just to throw you the gauntlet, how fast can you implement change? What are you going to do?
Well, I think there are some very effective tools, like you are now speaking about those. One thing that we did in my previous organization last year was it's called Call for Action, which is basically, it's a work paper or a few papers that you go through with your staff, and you sort of you ask the questions that you were asking. It helped me to see where I am, sort of where I'm privileged and where I cannot be. And that was like, it sent me personally, like, I don't know, like if we say that COVID has made technology move 10 years in 1 year, maybe I moved 10 years in 1 year by thinking through all of those things, that sort of how our systems in a way might not really consider things like how to bring up people. We might, for instance, like a concrete example, we might, when we are posting up a new job application, we might require erinomainen suomen kieli, even if maybe the job doesn't really, we maybe haven't thought about, is this a position where we could bring in a person who maybe doesn't have the perfect language skill but has the other perfect skill. So it might be somebody who maybe is not as fluent in Finnish yet or Swedish, but equally has. So there might be like these small things which we don't even think about when we just put up our criteria for what we need to do. So those are, that made me, when you said like how fast, I think we can, we've now learned from COVID that things can happen really fast. And one of the most positive things that I think is happening is that since we are so much online and so much connected, we might reach people that we normally wouldn't have. At the same time, of course, if you don't have access to all this technology, COVID might also make you really, really underprivileged in this sense. But there is sort of a lot of things now going on, and we have that possibility of really bringing information out quite fast. So I would, for instance, recommend a call for action paper, even if it took several days to go through, but because it raises so many questions and so many feelings, because you get quite frustrated and angry when you sort of again and again and again you realize that, oh, maybe we should be doing more, and you know, that you're sort of part of the problem, as I think you sort of said.
Well, there's enough guilt to go around the world, and I should be doing more. And I think it's beautiful what Aleksi did say about privilege. We're all privileged, but at the same time, it can also become a hindrance that it becomes guilt. I'm so privileged. Everybody's privileged compared to somebody, I mean. So let's also remember that. But obviously, it's good to think about. One thing I want to go into, so Jari, you were talking about, let's say, I don't know if you all think that it's a good thing to implement, but one thing that is talked about, let's say quotas. Quota is a word that is very, people have various opinions, obviously, about it. So Jari, you were already talking about quotas. I already talked about quotas a bit, about a discomfort with the idea as a person from a minority background. But Seida, how do you vote? Is that one tool that should be implemented?
Well, this has been a quite discussion also during the ministry working group within the group, because personally, I don't like quotas. Let's put it this way, as Jada. But then when you have a very strong, very rigid structure, which doesn't have, or very few, let's say, possibilities to empower the ones who are not a part of structure, then how are you going to make it possible? This is one question. And we also fail to understand that we need to a little bit talk about equity, because if two people are not starting from the same point, but are expected to fulfill the race together and hopefully in a success, then we need to really understand in which way the, let's say, unprivileged one can be brought to exactly the same point. In that case, yes, maybe we need to talk about quotas very clearly, because it seems that it has been successful also in the gender equality discussion in Finland. But when it comes to recruitment in an orchestra, it's for sure it's based on the talent, and it's best of the best. I mean, I believe that it would be a bit controversial discussion to bring in, but then one should think that when we are really looking for people to hire, to recruit, we need to understand if other people are given the equal chance when it comes to, of course, the language requirements and all the barriers coming up. I believe that every institution and every individual art form, because they have their own barriers, they have their own possibilities. Music is not an art form that language manifests itself like a drama. So therefore, each institution can really invest time and energy to find in which way they can improve their own inclusive practices. I think this freedom should be given to the institutions. So in that case, I'm a little bit in between. I support positive incentives to be able to increase the cultural equity for everyone, to be able to have the possibility to participate in the workforce as an artist, as a cultural worker, as a professional, and to feel that when the system operates exactly the same way for others, then these people will have possibility to do something for a professional growth, for working possibilities, for grant system, funding, everything.
Well, there are some really great examples of how it can work when you actually use money and you use resources and you sort of say that you won't get this unless you really do inclusive work, and then that means, and it's numbers and figures, it's 50% non-white or something like that. It has proven to be quite effective because people often tend to, if we are talking about big institutions that roll from year to the second one, usually those incentives to make big changes, either they come sort of from like an artistic, inspirational side, or then it has something to do with how you, for instance, the things where we are even more encouraged all the time to include people of different ages, all those sorts of things in classical music is very much also, it has one part in, of course, in funding, that funding supports that. So I think there are some initiatives that definitely could be made from, for instance, from the ministry in order to think how we think about these things. But I don't, unfortunately, I'm not a believer in quotas myself in that actual, but I do believe in, as you said, in positive incentives towards, because I do think that you can steer quite a lot. And the most important thing is not, it's not that people start to form their activities, but that you actually, when you read the text where that is sort of highlighted, that starts a process in your mind. And then maybe a few years later, you don't need the money incentive to think how you can act maybe more diverse or inclusive, in a more inclusive way, but instead it sort of might become ingrained in you. And not everything always is. I can always refer to the whole women in different positions. That's been sort of the same story, that it took quite a long time for women to be included in classical music or in very many fields.
I think the question of quotas is a very complex one, and we could spend a lot of time sort of understanding what are the ways in which you can use those and what are the problems and so forth. For me, it's a question of leadership. We already see that the change is happening. How do we support that change? And in my experience, about leadership, it's not the most functional way. Often is not to sort of command a rule from above and say, now obey. It's about engaging with the people who are together making the change and sort of educating, learning, discussing, and sort of having this inner will and understanding of why this matter is important, why is diversity so crucial for any art field in the future. And as Sujari, you said earlier about the competitiveness of the business of classical music, it's very hard, and it's sort of only the top quality artists can somehow manage, and who sort of decides what is top, and so that's another question, but still it's extremely competitive. And the question is, how do we make it at the same time welcoming while maintaining the sort of the quality and the quality. Yeah.
I was just gonna add, actually, for example, it's really, really nice to be able to be a part of this conversation and to bring some other things to the table. But I think this could also be really beneficial if you have some kind of conversation with a lot of different students. Like, I'm sure there are, like my friends, for example, we are all from different countries, from here, from France, from Slovakia, from Spain, like many, many, many places you can spin on the map, from Georgia, from Turkey, everywhere. And I think that not only, like, I have something that I could, like, we can all say almost the same thing, and it's really nice to be around like-minded people, but they also have different experiences that I feel like can be represented as well in this conversation. And it's also good for them. Like, they are not going to see from my eyes, for example, and I'm not going to see from theirs. And I feel like it's amazing to open the door, but it would be even nicer to somehow, of course with Corona we can't really do it, but to somehow have a really, really big group of people, and to be able to speak to professionals like yourselves to kind of hear like everything that you're saying. I don't know. It's just a little thing I wanted to add.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to make one clarification, because when it comes to positive incentives and this kind of change in the institutions, we of course normally talk about funding, but I want to make it very clear that I don't believe diversity and inclusion work should be done when and if there is extra money. So I believe that all institutions with their existing resources should invest in more inclusive way of working. And we need to see this inclusive or diverse representation in maybe 3 or 4 levels in the whole art scene. First of all, leadership, boards and leaders of the institutions, in the whole culture of the organization, artistic output, whatever institution produce, and audience. Because usually this diversity and inclusion discussion, this is my experience in Finland, starts from the audience outreach part. But if we're able to make this discussion all these layers, and to make it possible that inclusive working methodologies will be a part of institutional daily practice, now we can do something, because we shouldn't really bring money as a condition to this discussion. Then we will not end up in a positive way. And also there are very, very good examples how change can happen. I collected some good examples from different countries. Are we going to continue the discussion on that?
Give me an example.
Well, it's very simple. If you just Google diversity and inclusion and put some country names, you see. And what I collected here, just not to make any mistake, for instance, in last August, the League of American Orchestras, it's a huge organization, more than 1,800 members. Of course, after Black Lives Matter, they just went out with a statement on racial discrimination. And they very shortly said this: they acknowledge, accepted responsibility for, and apologize for the role it has played in excusing and participating in systematic discrimination based on race within the orchestral field. This is, I would call, a big action, and it's possible. And if you look at from that part, Metropolitan Opera, they continued. They just, through the leadership, put a very clear statement to their audience, and they said that they will start listening sessions, they will have senior management training, and they will even go further for paid internship programs.
Okay, paid internship programs. I think it's good that institutions obviously have opinions, but one could say that every institution these days has a statement, and then they have big words. Words are, well, like I said, talk can be cheap. I want action. I want something to happen. What about, what word can we see changed here?
Well, actually, of course, I believe in
Because
action.
everybody can condemn everything. I mean, everybody feels like you go on Twitter, everybody is condemning something these days.
Yeah, but the problem is that how these institutions, when they go out with a statement, and how we, as an audience, as a member of the society, will hold them accountable. So we need to really ask institutions to be responsible, first of all, and to be relevant to the society, and to be accountable with their actions, where it comes, of course, monitoring the actions of the institutions. And when this monitoring and challenge starts, of course, institutions also respond. There are good examples from UK and how just a team up with big and established orchestras with music education charity and really committed a certain actions to diversify everything. And current discussion is happening in Paris Opera. They hired they confirmed that very soon they will hire a diversity officer like Metropolitan Opera. I mean, those are the things that can be also seen in action. So why don't we see, for instance, in Sibelius Academy, like Berklee College of Music, a department for diversity and inclusion, that this department really stimulate the discussion with the students.
Here's an idea, for Emily right away. You can take that.
There is quite a lot of work like that being done in the global music department and also in the music education department. But it is true, there could probably be a lot more. But I do also think that since in Finland we have a different structure than in many of, like Metropolitan Opera has 80% private funding and corporations behind it, and we have very much the government. So I think a lot of the sort of impulses that have to come when I was speaking about incentives and funding, a lot of things that we all have to put in our plans when we are applying and writing for our things is our values and how we aim to reach those things. And there are lots of different aspects to that, but the more that it's maybe told also from a formal level that this is what we want from you, this is where Finland is going. We are going towards including everybody who is here. Also was it 13 or 16% that don't speak Finnish or Swedish and in Helsinki. So it also in Finland I think very much needs to come also from the top, really from the top, that is a desire and that it's not like an added bonus, but it's really ingrained in our operations, because that is how we work. We answer to those things because that is essential in order for us to function like we do nowadays.
I'm not going to bring up some people consider this a conspiracy theory when you talk about the populace is going to change, but like Alex said, this is happening in Finland. I mean, we're going to have a more diverse population here in the years to come. So just for everybody who's like a conspiracy theory, that's not what we're talking. I want to talk about the future, but Alexi, quickly.
No, I just sort of, there's such a common misunderstanding that I want to point out. You know, talking about the audiences and the diversity. Looking at the Helsinki Philharmonic Orchestra audiences, the majority are indeed from sort of pale skin color and mostly elderly people. And that definitely is not to say that, you know, that's somehow wrong. I mean, I really appreciate every single member of the audience. It's amazing that they come to the concert week after week. So there's nothing wrong about the audiences that we have. It's the question that we have to ask ourselves, why are not someone else coming as well in addition? And what are the sort of, what can we do to support that? But I just wanted to say that out loud because it's such a common
I think it's absolutely, and I want to point it out, it is okay to be pale, it is okay to have pale skin, whatever. We have, that's an excellent point. And we have actually an audience question, which I would love to hear at this point.
Yes. The question is, what is classical music in the way that, how do we speak of the other than Western classical music that has been created throughout thousands of years in other parts of the world?
Great question. Who wants to start?
Well,
John.
No, please, if you'd like to start as well.
Well, of course. I mean, this is the thing, because we should really look at the programs, the offerings of the institutions and orchestras when it comes, and how limited and how rich it can be. And of course, it's a big ignorance if we think about global south and all these sophisticated music traditions, and also many different countries and let's say young musicians who really educated themselves in the Western classical music and managed to do incredible compositions. Why we are not able to hear it here? So maybe.
I feel like if this is somehow kind of answering the question, I feel like this idea that we do have to kind of start at the top and get like the interest there, maybe there's some kind of way to get people who are more well-versed in the other types of classical music from different cultures somehow into the deciding position, so that actually we can learn the traditions of other countries. I mean, I feel like classical music, yeah, it's really West, but what does West even mean? I mean, for example, we are kind of all, in a way, from the West, like in the modern sense of the word, if it makes sense. And I feel like
adopting Western principles.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know where we're supposed to draw the line, like West or East, you know. And you can even argue about which came first and which parts that you want to kind of blend. I don't know.
We have another question. We have 5 more minutes, so I want another audience question. So thank you so much for these answers already. The next one.
What could be done to promote music by Black composers and persons of color? At the moment, it's hard to find music in libraries. We don't hear this music in concerts.
Well, yeah. Maybe. Sorry, if I could take this one,
Yeah.
for like 2 minutes, and then everyone else.
Then Emily.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I think really, I would have to say the same thing. It starts at the beginning. I feel like a lot of black or brown or people of color or any term that people can use, like we just don't have these opportunities sometimes to even see it as our music. I mean, there's some kind of disconnect between the music in America that comes from Europe or comes from America or comes from the black people in America. So I feel like there's just so many different levels on like why we can't find the music, and yeah, I think it's just that it's not promoted as much as it could be. But then if you guys want to take,
there is so much music which is not heard and that would deserve to be heard, and that's a real issue, and sort of supporting the diversity there. One of the concrete things that we are now working on with the Helsinki Phil is to sort of look at our own musical tradition and the composers of the late 19th, early 20th century. Composers who were not heard at their time, who were perhaps not neglected or didn't have the chance to be even premiered, and having a re-look at those compositions and sort of writing them.
Kind of forgotten artists.
Yeah. So I'm really inspired about the prospects there and sort of what can we find that the stories that are being untold, and finally perhaps giving some voices.
And there's also the important part, of course, is the research into that and the fact that now we have a big interest. There are lots of researchers who want to work with the music that hasn't been, to sort of want to bring it up and want to have it then being played and performed. And I think that's where we can have beautiful collaboration with Finnish orchestras and especially, of course, the Helsinki Philharmonic, who is very active in this thing, that we just make sure that different unheard composers get to be heard. But then we also, of course, we need to look very carefully at what is happening right now and whose voices we want to hear, and not sort of be lagging behind in that, but really being proactive. And hopefully once sometime again actually go there and see people, because that is also something that is very inspirational when you notice that the audience connects to something that maybe is not part of this Western canon, that it's not, Rachmaninoff's piano concerto and everybody is, but that you realize that, oh, this contemporary music, it really, really rocks the world. And then you suddenly, you will definitely then want to bring that also at home.
Sort of really saddens me that, throughout this season we were supposed to look at the Middle and Far East and what is happening in Western classical music, so-called Western classical music there. And, because of coronavirus, most of the whole program that we had developed with our chief conductor, Susanna Mälkki, and the artistic committee is sort of now cancelled. And Jada had worked with an inspiring series of 3 concerts on the Horizon series of not only the Western classical music, but different musical heritages meeting. And let's see if we can have at least a part of that happening. So a lot of efforts gone in the vein, but let's keep on going.
Let's Corona will end, and let's hope for the best, and we'll be able to enjoy these concerts. And I think it's an interesting idea that we can at the same time look at the future and find new forms of classical music, new ways, broaden the sense of what classical music actually can be, but I also enjoy quite this idea that we can look into the past at the same time and find forgotten composers, artists, and who knows what's in there.
Well, maybe what I can say very shortly, because when we had a very good discussion with the UniArts rector, and he told us at GAP in our organization, the transformation within the Sibelius Academy to GLOMAS as a department has been very, very good experience for them. So I believe that the institutions, also higher arts education institutions, should invest this kind of musical collaborations and to create an ecosystem for this. Then students and then programmers will feel comfortable and hear, and then it will reach out to the audience.
We're running out of time. I actually could continue this discussion quite a bit. It's been very interesting ideas. But as a journalist, when I don't get an answer to my question, I feel frustrated. So Emily, I will ask in the end, which Aleksi already told me, is classical music too white? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I feel good that I got that answer from there. It's just a journalist thing. Don't take it personally. I need that. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a fantastic conversation with all my guests here. Absolutely continue the discussion at home also, and find new classical music and go to the past, obviously. And you can find, who knows what you can find. I think there will be fantastic things. But this is everything for this time at Taide Yliopisto. Obviously, there will be more discussions in the months to come. You can check the program at the site uniarts.fi/taide. And concerning this discussion, this recording will be on YouTube, so you can check it out at any time. But now, everyone stay safe, and well, you can wear cool masks like this. Just stay safe and be well. Thank you. Thank you.